Afternoon. My name is Devon Keller, and I'm here to talk about mass incarceration in the United States. In this presentation, I will be looking at low-level nonviolent drug offenders and the impact that they have on mass incarceration and the overcrowding that happens in the prisons in the United States. I will be looking at the public and their views on this subject. I will also provide studies that show the number of low-level nonviolent drug offenders incarcerated and their outcomes from prison. Lastly, I will also provide personal reference from a Philadelphia police officer. The public's view on mass incarceration. In this article, the authors begin by stating that the United States now incarcerates a higher percentage of its population than any country in the world. This quote shows that the United States has a tendency of incarcerating any criminals, no matter the seriousness of the crime. We should be more focused on getting the help for the ones who need it before throwing them into a cell. For example, if a drug addict is arrested for being high, they deserve to get treatment, not prison. Most addicts live on the streets and are presumed homeless, so yeah, the public would like to see them off the streets, but they most certainly do not deserve prison unless they are a serious threat to society. This shows that the public is interested in what happens to criminals and the prison system. This article talks about how elites have more control over what happens to criminals, which is why the public goes against them, wishing that the punishment for less violent offenders was not as harsh. The elites took this as the public being too soft. This article is important to my topic because there are a lot of other people around the United States who also believe that some criminals get extreme punishment for less serious of crimes. Reducing sentences for low-level, nonviolent drug offenders. In this video, the reporters talk about a reform called Drugs Minus 2. This reform releases dozens of nonviolent drug offenders and gives them a chance to receive less of a punishment before receiving their mandatory minimum. Mandatory minimum is when someone receives their sentence but cannot use this reform to get their sentence reduced. Kasparian states that 95,000 prisoners are being put away for some sort of drug crime and 2,000 of them are serving life without parole. Kasparian mentions a case of a 21-year-old named Robert Shipp, who was convicted for selling crack cocaine and received a life sentence. When he arrived in court in front of the judge immediately agreed that his life sentence was unnecessary. This reform both decreases crime rates and serves nonviolent drug offenders less punishment. The California referendum. In this video, Los Angeles reporter Lindsay France talks about the nonviolent drug offenders getting their charges dropped down to misdemeanors. This is known as Proposition 47 in LA. Put together by a variety of different backgrounds. These backgrounds consist of conservative Christians, civil libertarians, liberals, and people from political and religious philosophies. Once their charges are dropped and they're out of prison, they will open up programs to get them back on their feet and act as a member of society. This referendum helps my thesis because it creates space in prisons and saves states a lot of money. Holder endorses shorter prison sentences for nonviolent drug crimes. In this news report, reporter discusses a case where U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder is proposing a lesser sentence for nonviolent drug offenders. He believes that there needs to be more of a just system for low-level drug offenders. He states this focused reliance on incarceration is not just financially unsustainable, it comes with human and moral costs that are impossible to calculate. He prompted to change the average sentence for drug dealers by 11 months. This wouldn't be beneficial just to the offender, but it would also show a decrease in prison population by 6,500 inmates after just 5 years. He believes that the sentencing system now has caused a failed racially biased war on drugs. This helps my thesis because Holder also agrees with the fact that sentence reduction will help the overcrowding in prisons. Interview with Officer McCook. During this interview, I asked Officer McCook basic questions about his job, but I also asked him what and how he feels about the narcotics division. His duty consists of stopping drug dealers from getting their supplies on the streets. He believes that it is more reasonable to get addicts and users the mental help that they need instead of putting them in prison. This interview helped my topic because he agrees that mass incarceration is at an all-time high, so if the focus was shifted to the dealers and suppliers and not the addicts and users, there will be less incarcerations. There are way more users than there are dealers and suppliers. To conclude this presentation, I just wanted to mention the importance of incarceration rates in the United States. I put this together to show people that low-level, nonviolent criminals shouldn't be getting the harsh punishments that they do. I provided many sources to support this thesis. They are there to show that there are people, including higher officials, who also agree that nonviolent, low-level criminals shouldn't be getting sent to prison for long periods of time because they're just causing overcrowding. After this presentation, it should be clear that all that mass incarceration is is a huge problem, especially in the United States. This is just the beginning of the solutions that can help reduce it. All we have to do is put a start to it. Thank you for listening. My name is Devon Keller, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation.